We're joined in the studio by Liz Collin. I would imagine most listeners know the name Liz Collin, longtime Channel 4 newscaster, then left. I think she's kind of our own Barry Weiss. She saw the light and left conventional heritage news gathering and is now with Alpha News. Has most recently written a book called They're Lying, which is, who's there? Who's the
media and the left. And Joe, I want to say it's been almost a year since I've been here. I thought you guys were kind of pissed off at me. I'm going to be honest, and didn't ask me back
because I used.
So Chris was pissed off at me.
I used it because I thought we needed a best of because Joe just likes to take time off all the time.
Oh,
so
that's what I've heard.
I don't take enough time off. I'm sorry.
So I used that segment thinking it'd be kind of neat to get, and I did not realize it was almost a year ago.
I know it's been a year, but thank you very much because a lot of people heard that show and had me talk about the book and such after hearing the interview. And so I'm thrilled to be back here a year later to discuss. A lot has happened in the last year. But the book, yes, is They're Lying, the media, the left, and the death of George Floyd. And thank you very much for your kind introduction, too.
What are they lying about?
Well, okay, you said we have about 30 minutes, so here goes.
But we can go longer. Don't worry about that.
the beauty of podcasting.
No doubt.
So basically, the lies begin very early on in this case. Many people don't know that it's a black officer who arrested George Floyd that day. This, of course, became known as the most racist police incident in U.S. history, and the facts certainly did not support that. There's a reason they hid the body camera footage as long as they did. If you recall, it was 2.5 months after the incident that it was actually leaked. The very first time in Minneapolis police history that body camera footage from an incident has been withheld from the public. They're lied about the autopsy, and some of that stuff recently came to light that I know we can discuss as well. But the list of lies is quite long.
What do you tell people like me when I say I can't unsee the knee?
Yeah, certainly everyone is troubled by that viral video. However, there is this 15-minute interaction before that video takes place where you have George Floyd saying several times that he can't breathe long before Derek Chauvin arrives on the scene. He is actually the one who's asking to be laid on the ground during all of this. You also have Thomas Lane on his 4th day on the job as an officer, and he calls for an ambulance within 36 seconds of George Floyd going to the ground. You have George Floyd who also goes ahead and says that he's not on anything. He didn't take anything, as officers are asking again and again. The incident itself was just made into something that the facts do not support. That's sort of the point of the book, and also the book is a little bit of my story, and the fact that the media got this wrong, and still to this day they're pushing this narrative that has been very dangerous. We don't have to look very far to see what has transpired in Minneapolis and frankly across the country when it comes to law enforcement leaving the profession, skyrocketing crime rates, et cetera. But again, we had our leaders pushing the narrative that we'd be living on the right side of history after all of this. That was their mantra. And the facts don't support that we are.
The reason it's still important is because that weekend in 2020 resulted in a tremendous cultural sea change, didn't it? Everything has changed since then. The tone of the city, the condition of the police department, the attitudes of elected officials, every single thing changed. Why do you think that was so powerful? Because of that film that was captured on the phone?
And also, I wanted to mention in the body camera footage, and a big lie, too, is that this is simply a part of training, this maneuver that's happening. You also had these so-called leaders pushing this lie that they'd never seen this maneuver before. It's not a part of training. Well, then why did 2 pages of the police manual go offline for several weeks? 2 pages mysteriously go missing that explain this maximal restraint technique, something that there are 4 references in the body camera footage to MRT, the officers talking amongst each other There's a very problematic paramedic response that day that we get in more into the film, which we're going to talk about. But you have a police force now that was nearly 890 cops in Minneapolis. It's down to 512. Those are the latest numbers from just a couple of weeks ago. People have moved out of the city for good reason, but you really have these leaders sort of doubling down on this and continue to paint the police as the bad guys here.
It's reached the point where the city was frozen. They couldn't even make a decision about the third precinct. All they got to do is throw $5 million into the existing 3 precincts, save the taxpayers a lot of money. But instead, we get this hand wringing and this angst about, well, that might offend people. And well, you know what? It's time to grow up and just say, let's have some fiduciary responsibility here. That's not going to happen. They're going to create a new third precinct. Ironically, it's only 2 or 3 blocks away. That maybe is a different story. But more importantly, as a result of the book, you have developed a film that will be debuting when?
That is coming out on November 16th, so very soon.
It's called The Fall of Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And you don't mean autumn.
Nope, it happens to be coming out in the fall, but
Right.
yeah, that's sort of the title we picked in all of this because that's certainly what has happened to that city. A once vibrant, safe city seems to be anything but. You have thousands of businesses that have closed their doors in Minneapolis. And again, I wish I could offer some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, but I think the light really has to focus on the truth. And that's sort of my role, I feel like, in this is telling the truth about all of this and giving a voice to the people that lost theirs in the wake of this. And that includes in the Fall of Minneapolis, officers talking about what they experienced at the third precinct. Another sort of lie that was told about this, this is a planned surrender of that building that takes place on that Thursday during the riots in the city. And these officers are basically served up to the angry mob with no exit plan. It's truly heartbreaking to hear these cops, really the best of the best, in my opinion, people with 20, 30 years of service for the city. And they left the job because why wouldn't they? After what took place. So they're basically running for their lives from this building as the city bus is late to even pick them up. The bus wasn't able to pull up to the front of the building, so the plan was to park it a half mile away as these officers with no exit plan at all from the top are running for their lives to this bus, and the bus is then late to pick them up. So they're telling this story, and then when they come back and their entire offices are ransacked and destroyed.
The Fall of Minneapolis then will concentrate on the fall of the third precinct?
It'll be some of that, but it does tell the story of this case. It's the very first time Derek Chauvin has spoken out. I speak to him in prison, obviously, in Arizona.
Yeah.
And also Alex King, again, the black officer from North Minneapolis. He tells his story for the first time. His mom is a part of the film. Derek Chauvin's mother is a part of the film as well. So many people who have never spoken out before are in this movie.
So the third precinct went down on a Thursday night, the 28th, you're saying, Liz. That was after days of rioting. I have footage from early in the day on Thursday, the 28th, where I was in that shopping area where Target is on Minnehaha on Lake Street. And there was looting going on at 10 in the morning. Right in bright daylight, they're going in and out of stores, taking stuff out. So, Joe, you made reference earlier that it was a weekend. It was actually a week-long looting session.
That's right.
That went on. And the third precinct didn't go on till, the third day in, Liz?
Yeah.
Well, didn't Floyd go down on Memorial Day?
Correct.
Yep, the 25th.
And just to back up a bit, that was the plan, that they were going to give the third precinct. And when I say they, this is, the police chief of Minneapolis. I'm sure the governor of Minnesota knew about this plan, but they were going to surrender this building, thinking that would then get the riots to stop. That was a part of the plan. We obviously know now that was not... That did not work, but none of these officers thought that was a good idea. They thought it was completely insane. and in fact only empowered the rioters through all of this. And then you have the media talking about how peaceful and how moving these peaceful protests were all week. They were perpetuating that message from the very start.
They weren't peaceful.
Correct.
Did you talk to any of the citizens of South Minneapolis?
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of that for Alpha News, talking about all the fallout from all of this. We did in the film, and we're going to do. The thing is, we had so much, and it was actually hard to even edit it down. But the film itself is about 90 minutes. We're still finishing it, but it'll be done.
The one thing that prompted my wife and I to move, we lived on 20th Avenue, 39th and 20th, so one block south of 38th in South Minneapolis. Wow. And the one thing that we found really disgusting is the city called basically a citywide meeting where all the people in certain blocks would come to a park and meet with city leaders. And they told everybody that gathered in our park, in our case, it was, what's that park I live in? I can't even remember the name now. But they told everybody, go home, lock up your trash containers, draw your shades, stay in your house. Just to protect ourselves from the mayhem that was going on. Us, the wife and I, and a bunch of other neighbors found that very, very offensive. And we all set about guarding our neighborhood. We put up makeshift barriers. We were out walking the neighborhood, protecting the neighborhood, while other neighbors were sitting in their house, peeking out under the shades. They wanted us to be in our house and not protect our personal property. It was amazing and despicable.
Were you still with Channel 4 at the time?
Yeah, she was.
I was, yep. I obviously wasn't allowed to report on any of this, and this is sort of how the book came to be, because I still to this day think that they would have told the truth about all of this right in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
You have the autopsy of George Floyd done within 12 hours of him dying. That's withheld from the public for a week,
and he
long
died
after.
of a fentanyl overdose.
Well, you have fentanyl. He has a heart condition that people don't talk about. A lot more of this is in the movie itself.
George had a tough life. It wasn't. This wasn't his first encounter with the police.
You also have Minneapolis police lying about that. The chief of police says that they've never had anything to do with George Floyd, no history at all. Well, there's an arrest that takes place in May of 2019, almost a year earlier, where George Floyd is the subject of an undercover drug investigation. And if you watch the body camera footage from 2019 and 2020 side by side, they're almost identical.
Mm-hmm. Did you have something, Chris?
Well, you mentioned the governor and the mayor, wanting to give up the third precinct. It's clear they didn't have a plan, and we saw that unfold. Where we're basically saying, get the guard in here. This needs to stop. But I want to go back to the initial idea for the video, because we were alerted a number of years ago by former KSTP reporter Bill Dahlman on Seattle is dying, and that's kind of the way I picture this. Because Joe, we talked about that video at length back when it came out. What was it, 2019, whenever it was, basically talking about the overriding drug addiction in the city of Seattle and how it's just made that city become less than what it used to be. And that's kind of what I'm picturing with your video, because just knowing you a little bit and knowing how you work. And Joe had even said this back then, that you could make this about basically any of these big cities around the country.
Right. I mean, the match was struck here in Minneapolis, and it certainly spread all across the country. And some of the video we have in the film is truly heartbreaking to see. But a lot of the video, I'll be honest, it's shot in the middle of the afternoon during a weekday when you have. People look like zombies walking around, or they're committing crimes, and you just capture it on camera. It's just truly. Really hard and difficult after, and how it changed in just like overnight.
I remember rhetorically wondering this on the show, that it ignited it ignited the world. That week ignited the world, not just nationally. It ignited the world, and what I was wondering rhetorically was Minneapolis on such a razor thin edge prior to this evening of Memorial Day in 2020, that it didn't take much for this to explode? In other words, there has to be more here than meets the eye. It was almost as though people were looking for an excuse.
Well, COVID too, Joe.
To erupt, and they're coming out of, that was in the middle of COVID.
Yeah, full swing.
And because it doesn't stand to reason that one police incident out of hundreds that day, even though that video is so damning, it doesn't stand to reason that this would have resulted in essentially, and to a great degree, the collapse of that city.
Yeah, I think that certainly we've seen in Minneapolis progressive politics at play. Obviously, it's been controlled by Democrats for decades, but you really have a very far left group that has taken over politically.
Well, we're beyond Democrats. We're dealing with the Democratic Socialists of America.
Correct.
And their platform is different than the DFL
Well, and this is why I say it was the perfect people in the perfect positions for this to play out. And certainly this was a presidential election year, so that played a role, ousting then President Trump at all costs. So I think that politics had much more to do with this than the actual truth.
Does the film get beyond the week of George Floyd? Do we
Yep,
do you capture what's happened since then?
we have an entire section of the film that focuses on the aftermath itself. So we go into. Thank you very much. You guys are
You're
so
welcome.
accommodating with water.
That'll be
Rookie
75
has
cents.
3 beverages, by the way. I don't
He
know.
conducts some sort
What's
of science
happening?
experiment
I
every
get
day.
thirsty.
Yeah, where he
Playing the
puts
dumb when
ice
you get
in
very thirsty.
one glass and colored water in another glass, and then
Fun. There's
flavored
a lot
water
happening
in another
over
glass.
there.
He thinks he's Mr. Science.
That's the most.
When can you say November 16th for the
Yes.
Fall of Minneapolis? How will people see it?
So it is a free film. It was a crowd-funded documentary, still is. So if anybody, I beg for money now, Joe. That I work for nonprofit news,
Right,
so that's what we
right.
do. It's thefallofminneapolis.com, but people have been incredible supporting this project, and our whole point is that we know a lot of people don't read this day and age, but this is going to be out right before Thanksgiving, so you guys can invite your family over, maybe drink a little wine, have a good time, and then put on this film, especially for maybe your more left-leaning family members, and then get into domestics.
That'd
So
be
let me
fun.
know how this.
Yes, yeah, Joe, let us know there, buddy.
Let's know how that works out, the old homestead, Joe.
But this will be on Rumble.
Rumble is
Well,
where.
what the hell is Rumble?
Okay, so you go to Rumble. It's all free, Joe. I'm going to help Joe. It's going to be.
You're
And
dealing with unfrozen caveman lawyer over here is what it is.
It's Alpha News MN, all one word, on Rumble. But we're also going to push it out on alphanews.org. We will put it up on X, Facebook, but we think Facebook and YouTube probably will take it down within 37 seconds. That's
I was
what we
just going
think.
to ask that
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I'm wondering, with the way that we all know that a lot of different news platforms have their own agenda, both left-leaning and right-leaning. We all get all of that. Is this the future of mainstream news gathering, in your opinion?
Oh, I mean, I cannot tell you just how much I've learned about all this in the last couple of years. But yes, I mean, we get hundreds of thousands of views on our website every day, which is many more than we'll watch let's say a weekend newscast or something, or even on Twitter, X. I got to figure this out. Even on X itself, tens of thousands of it's people have turned off the mainstream media, and for good reason. They just it's sort of like money over morals. Ethically, I just didn't feel good about not informing the public anymore, and people have caught on to that. And they, took me a little while, but I'm right there with them. So.
Liz, during the week of the riots, you were at the fore. Were you out on the streets as a reporter? I remember Frank and Amelia at the desk, and I was watching all the channels. That, to me, was a great week to watch the news because nothing was scripted. Everything was off the cuff, and we really got to see some interesting news gathering. What was your week like, the week of the riots?
Yes, so as part of the organized lunacy, the rioters were coming after me as well. So I was basically in hiding because of all the death threats that were happening at my house.
Right.
Because of course this was all my husband's fault
Right.
as the president of the police union. So no, I was off the air for almost a month. I was still working. I was at home or staying with friends and such because that's literally what happened. Things started showing up in the mailbox.
Yep.
They were posting pictures of our house online, etc. So we just sort of pulled the shades and went into hiding.